All right. How'd you get started with the tuba?
I was 14 and idle and not doing very well in school and had been caught stealing candy bars in Conklin's.
Any particular brand of candy bar?
Anything that they were on a O. Henry's or Milky Way, they all cost a nickel a piece, which I didn't have. And
How old were you?
other kids had stolen candy bars in Conklin's, but they stopped. I didn't have the brains to stop, and I got caught. My dad got called, either this or this, or
And you were about 14, right?
yeah. And they didn't send me to reform school. Sometimes they did. They would send a kid to reform school for a thing like that. And in Minotare, Nebraska, town of 1,100 population maximum, and so then along came this strange man. I was just standing around idly talking with two other teenagers. It was summertime, we're on summer break.
Bored.
And a stranger comes up to us and introduced himself, and I forgot his name, and he said, he presented himself as the next music teacher. The school had decided to hire a music teacher, which they had never done before. And part of his job was he had to organize also a town band, because the taxes there wasn't that much tax money.
So there was a new guy in town, and
So
the
there's a
school
new-
decided they needed a music teacher and a band, and he had to start a band.
He had to recruit them, and he didn't have the people for it.
And it was summertime, so there were no students in the classroom, so he had to go find the students.
That's right. And he had to create musicians. So he said, I'll give you free lessons.
Well, didn't you say earlier that he noticed something about you?
Oh, my thick lips. Hey, kid, you got thick lips. You'd be a good tuba player. Because that was considered, it's not true. Every professional tuba player I ever worked with, and I worked with the best ones in the United States, they all had normal lips or even thin lips. It has nothing to do with the thickness of your lips. And by the way, some of the highest notes are played on a trumpet by black guys with thick lips the size of your fist. It's a matter of training. And
So
anyway,
how did you start learning to
so
play
I told them,
tuba?
I said, oh, I'll go, I have to ask my mom and dad. They said, sure, ask your mom and dad. And then I don't know how he checked back. I guess I didn't know. We had a telephone or how I met him again. So I went home and asked my mom and dad, and they were delighted I was going to do something besides get in trouble and stand around wasting time. And I said, sure. So I was given a tuba, a beaten up old tuba, which belonged to the city, belonged to the high school. I don't know which. I wasn't
You mentioned
given
a banker earlier.
I was lent a tuba to use
Okay.
and given free lessons.
But you also told me that when the gentleman introduced himself,
What?
when he introduced himself to you the first time,
Yeah.
he asked if you wanted to play the same instrument as the town
As
banker.
Glenn Etter. Glenn Etter was the town banker.
Okay.
A quite respected gentleman. Played the sousaphone. Now, the sousaphone is different from the usual.
The big white one, right?
It's the one which winds around the body.
Yeah.
It's much more graceful looking. It's big, but it's shiny and show off and graceful. He said, I'll teach you on the same instrument as Glenn Etter plays, but it's smaller. So I thought, well, nothing bad about that. I asked my mom and dad. They were delighted that their son was going to do something besides get in trouble.
How were you doing in school, by the way, aside
was
from
I
tuba?
what?
How were you as a student?
I was a lousy student. I was one of the dumbest ones in class. And I don't know if I was just dumb or a neurotic combination. But I was likable.
What size was your school? Like, how many kids did you sit in the room with?
This was around 7th grade age, 8th grade age.
Okay.
And How many kids were in school? I don't know.
Or in a classroom with you at a time?
Well, at that time they called it junior high, 7th and 8th grade were junior high. And you would be in a class with 20 students
Okay.
and 20.
So how did tuba training go?
So every Saturday, I was allowed into the gym. Normally you couldn't get into school, but he met me every Saturday. I met him. I went to the school. He let me play on the tuba, and
You got free tuba lessons all summer.
free tuba lessons.
Free tuba and free tuba lessons.
Well, the tuba was never a use of the tuba. The tuba belonged to the school.
Right.
I didn't know there's all these petty details, but he let me take it home because he realized I needed to practice. You can have all the lessons in the world. It's practice which makes the thing go. And he taught me this, the first valve and the third and all that, hoping to make a tuba player out of it.
How was it to bring home that tuba and practice it in your house?
It was different. It was something new. And
How do your siblings and your family respond to it?
Neutrally, but they were kind of glad. They weren't greatly excited. They thought, oh, this the new band leader, the city council was voted on a band teacher or the school board. I don't know how that works. I still to this day don't know how it works. But apparently they had enough dollars, a few extra dollars, and they thought a music teacher should be hired.
So it worked out. Once you went and started school, you were taking regular band class and
not only that, I was put into the band at 7th grade, not knowing quite what it was. We were several of us put together, and I kept on with the free lessons. And by that time, after a couple of months, I knew how to play the tuba a little bit. And I had to learn he had to teach me also music, how to read music from left to right, as you learn.
How long did it take you to go from learning the basics to having your mother convinced you could handle Juilliard?
Well, 6 years. 6 years because I started in the 7th grade. 7th, 8th, 9th, 10th, 11th, 12th, 6 years.
Okay.
By the time, my mom was very shrewd in that respect. As I say, she was mean as hell, but she was also very smart in some ways.
Didn't she write a letter?
She wrote a letter to William Bell, and probably to a couple other places, who we had heard about William Bell. He was the tuba player in the NBC Symphony.
Oh.
That was the best in the land. It was under Toscanini. Toscanini was a great conductor. This was famous. There was no TV.
So the tuba player from NBC who worked under the direction of Toscanini was the one your mom wrote a letter to saying,
"My son is practically a genius." He laughed about it. He said, "Oh, your mom wrote a letter," that he kind of chuckled. He wanted to say, she built you up to be she really bragged about you.
Well, she was proud.
She was proud. And he wrote back. First she asked him for advice. And the advice was to go to one of 3 schools. Juilliard, but also Eastman. Eastman was in Rochester, New York, which was sponsored by the Kodak Company. The Kodak Company was one of the biggest companies in the world at that time. And you probably don't remember Kodaks.
I do.
And Curtis in Philadelphia. So there were 3 schools, one in Philadelphia, Curtis, which he recommended. These are the 3 he recommended. Juilliard in New York, and the one and one in Rochester.
Okay, so she got the recommendations from Bell.
Yeah, but those were free, but I didn't have anybody else living there, and I was a lost soul. I was swimming around it, developmentally. But my oldest sister, Winifred, happened to be going to Columbia University in New York City. And that was 2 blocks away from Juilliard.
Oh, that helps.
Well, there then came the matter of money. Well, she wrote and Juilliard and told them what a wonderful genius I practically was, and blah, blah, blah. And Juilliard wrote back and offered a $100 scholarship. $100 was not a full scholarship, but in 1941, it was a good chunk of money.
Okay.
And the fact that my sister lived 2 blocks away to keep me from going astray. We had each other, we had company. So I asked for entry into Juilliard, and I got entry into Juilliard.
Now, were there tryouts?
Huh?
Did you have to play the instrument?
Oh, yes.
How did that go? How did you
They
get
had to
there?
Well, by that time I had been playing. In the meantime, in high school, my mom and dad bought me a sousaphone, a very expensive one, more than $300.
Wow.
Make that about $30,000 or $35,000
Jesus.
today. It costs.
That's a big investment in your future, mister.
Yeah, and a 4-valve, and she was all in favor of me. I was the only son. She had 5 daughters, but I was the only one, and she had to push me to get me to go somewhere. So
How did you physically get to New York?
On a train, buses.
Were you alone or were you accompanied?
Well, I went alone.
With your sousaphone?
With my sousaphone.
Okay. Did you have a suitcase with some stuff in there?
I don't remember the details.
Just wondering.
Somehow me and
You and your sousaphone and the rest, details.
It had a case, and it was a 4-valve sousaphone. To my knowledge, to this day, it's the only 4-valve sousaphone that ever
And you
existed.
got there and you moved in with your sister,
I
right?
registered in. I didn't move in with my sister. She might have put me up for a day or two, but she found me a room.
Oh, so there went the plan of you being roommates. It's really her to be nearby and keep watch over you.
No, she was. No, I was never a roommate with Winifred, but she helped me find a room,
Okay.
and I had to pay $4 a week for that.
Where'd the money come from?
Mom and Dad kept sending me
So
money.
they paid for a place for you to stay, paid for tuition, got you your instrument, wrote letters to
Now,
the university.
The instrument was. I didn't use the sousaphone. They had their own tubas.
Oh,
They had a stock of instruments in Juilliard.
and they let you use them or did you rent
They
them?
let me use one.
Okay.
And I got to practice, and I was in a full program. At
Were
Juilliard.
there many other tuba players there? Do you remember?
Yes, there were.
Okay.
Sam Green and Ross Steen. I can't think of it. Good kids. And Sam Green helped me out. He later on got the Cincinnati Symphony while the war was going on, and the rest of us got drafted. But I got Juilliard had a very good program for beginners. You had to take piano. Piano was forcibly taught. You had to take piano, or you could not stay in Juilliard.
Oh, okay.
That was basic, because piano is so basic to instrumental teaching. I would say almost vocally.
So everyone was required to take piano, and at this time you were living alone, right?
At that time, I was living alone.
Okay, and you were studying in Juilliard. And did you have any favorite classes or professors?
Well, they give you my teacher. My teacher was Fritz Geib, who was the Juilliard teacher for tuba, and he worked in a famous place called Radio City Music Hall. I thought that was just wonderful. I would go down. He would make appointments with me for lesson time, and I would get to go down into the orchestra area
In the pit?
in Radio City Music Hall. They allowed me in to take my lesson with Fritz Geib once a week. He was an old German guy.
So you took your tuba lessons as you were a Juilliard student, but you physically went to Radio City Music Hall for your lessons.
Yes. And it cost a nickel each way on the subway, but I paid it.
See anything interesting while you were taking your tuba lessons?
There was no sudden interesting thing, but it was gradually. I was country hick. I was learning New York culture, New York. I'd never seen a subway, things like this. So I was learning, and I enjoyed most of it. And I enjoyed Juilliard. I heard classical music played. It wasn't the first time, a lot of recorded music. And there were different events you would have to, and I had to study theory. Music theory is written music that you, and the way chords are constructed, the way melody is constructed, and the way it's written down, and the way you read it off a piece of paper. So,
did you start liking your composers? Did you have a preference for composers in college or later on when you became a professional?
Later on, I had a preference for composers. The only composers I knew in high school were the composers who wrote rah-rah college songs, like "We Never Stumble, We Never Fall," Notre Dame. That was yes, there were a couple of college level that I had heard about, and I won. What really helped me go and give me confidence was that.
Yeah, because it hadn't dawned on me until right now. Before you really struggled in school, before the tuba,
yeah,
as a student, you really, really struggled, right?
Yes.
And now you're still in school, but it's not a traditional school. It's a school focused on
Juilliard. Well,
tuba, unless were they making you take any traditional
not tuba,
subjects?
all instruments and voices.
But you weren't taking math and science and.
No.
You weren't taking the traditional curriculum. It was all focused on your major, on music.
Different aspects of music.
Nice. And how was that like as a student compared to the traditional curriculum you had before? Did it all start falling into place? Was it interesting to you?
It didn't fall into place. You had to study, and you realized how big the world of music was. I heard about composers like Bach, Beethoven, and Brahms, although my mama taught me a little bit about that. And
I love that you just
by the
said
way,
mama.
Going back a little bit, even though I was a poor student in high school, I became quite proud of myself for two reasons. I could play the tuba, do something. I couldn't make the football team, but there was a contest in the spring, and still are, I guess, contests all over the United States to see who plays the best solo music.
Okay.
This can be on clarinet, piano, violin. It could be on trombone and tuba. And my music teacher said, "Why don't you enter into this contest and see if you can make it?"
Was it a national contest?
It was what they called it regional national.
Okay.
That means it was really on a regional, because there were no airplanes to speak of, so you couldn't travel that far in an appreciable time. So he said, you have to go to Omaha and play. It's going to be on this date, and he got me to practice a certain solo pomposo it was, and I got pretty good on it. And we got Mrs. Llewellyn, who was my savior in another way. Mrs. Llewellyn was a neighbor lady who played the piano, and she played and she helped me out. And so my mom organized it that Mrs. Llewellyn, she hired Mrs. Llewellyn.
A tutor, basically, a helper.
To go along. No, it's an accompanist.
Oh, accompanist to go with you to the contest.
What?
So wait, did your mom hire a piano player to go with you for this contest?
Yes, because
wow,
it required accompaniment.
Now, it required accompaniment, and back in the days, you didn't exactly have the technology to play a song that was recorded. You didn't have these portable...
They didn't have all that fake electronic things.
Yeah, there wasn't a thing that's electronic that you could just play music on with you.
Punch a button and it plays your symphony orchestra.
Yeah, you had to actually bring someone who could play an instrument with you.
Bring a live person to play. And Mrs. Llewellyn didn't mind. Got her out of the house. She had 3 boys. And she didn't mind going away for a few days, and she probably got paid. My mom never told me about it, but I'm sure she didn't do it for nothing. She probably went along for a few extra dollars that she made. And
Did your mom ever see you perform professionally?
Oh, yeah. Professionally, yeah, a couple times.
I mean, I'd like to think, after all that she went through, to help you out with this tuba and your success with the instrument, what about your dad? Did he ever see you perform professionally?
Yes, they all, not a few times.
Do you remember any of those times where they
Yes,
saw you
I do.
play?
Yes, I do.
Where were you?
One of the nice parts thing about is I got the job in Radio City Musical, which is where I had gone to take my first lessons in New York City in
Right.
Juilliard. I never thought I would get that job, and because time goes on, and Fritz Geib had retired, and there had been another tuba player, and then somebody came in and cleaned house, and I was on the incoming group, so they fired the old tuba player, and I got his job.
How did you know there was a job available?
I didn't know it. Joe Saunders called me up.
Who is Joe
Joe
Saunders?
Saunders, well, this was in the Indianapolis Symphony. My
Okay.
first professional job was in this Indianapolis Symphony. This goes back to Bill Bell. Bill Bell became also, Bill Bell got references. Because he was such a successful. When you're building an orchestra, you call on the best. You want to get the best. So the conductor in Indianapolis Symphony had to get a tuba player. He didn't like the one he had at all, and who was a homegrown product, and it just wasn't very good. So he phoned up Bill Bell, or contacted Bill Bell, who was still with the NBC Symphony, I guess, at that time. Although he went with the New York Philharmonic later on. I would like to have one of your tough students. I need a tuba player by such and such a time. The season was coming for him. He had to have it quick. The season begins in. There was only a season of about 26 weeks.
So Bill Bell, the person that your mom wrote to at some point,
Yeah.
saying, "Could you just give me some advice here, please?" The first person that your mom wrote to, requesting advice on how to help you just go somewhere with a tuba and study with a tuba. The same person later on recommended you for a job at what, Radio City?
He did, because he had become the teacher. He had replaced Fritz Geib. Bill Bell became the teacher of Juilliard, the tuba teacher of Juilliard.
Oh.
And I signed in at Juilliard right after World War II was over. And who was my new tuba teacher? Bill Bell. And so not only myself.
So you were a student at Juilliard when Bill Bell got a call from Radio City saying, or was it Indianapolis who called Bell?
It was Indianapolis who called
Saying,
Bell.
"We have a spot available. I want your best student," and you were his best student.
I was one of two. Joe Novotny was the other one.
Okay.
Joe Novotny, there was another one called from the Kansas City Symphony. Because the seasons began in October. It's a wintertime thing, symphony orchestra.
So how did he choose between two of you?
I don't know to this day.
Did you have a tryout, or did you both perform?
Well, no, I had to go. I had to play an audition.
Okay, you probably both
And
auditioned.
so I had to go to a hotel arranged for by the Indianapolis Symphony in New York. This is in New York. Fabian Savitsky was the conductor, and he's not going to buy a pig in a poke. He's not going to buy something unseen.
Right.
So even though Bill Bell recommended me, he wanted to hear me in person first. So I had to look at certain music and play this to a satisfactory point of view. You're going to make mistakes and things like that.
Right.
So he thought I was all right. He signed me to a contract.
So then you worked for the Indianapolis Symphony.
That was my first real job.
And how long were you there? How many years?
4 years. 4 years.
And you didn't even finish college. You were in college when you were hired.
I never did finish. But in those days, instrumentalists didn't care. I have to emphasize, they didn't care so much about the degree.
It was about getting the job, and you got the job. So you spent 4 years in Indianapolis,
Yeah.
and then you left for.
The last year of Indianapolis, there was a cello player in the. I kind of knew and didn't know. But there was a new cello player in the Indianapolis Symphony cello section. His name was Joe Saunders.
Okay.
And at the end of that season, I thought, oh, well, I'll try for Pittsburgh. And I would have gotten the Pittsburgh Symphony. He was leaving. But just about that time, I got a call from Joe Saunders. Listen, I've recommended you for Radio City Musical.
So the cellist recommended you unbeknownst to
Yes, because
you.
he turned out to be a secret that we didn't know because
He's secret what?
secret agent. He was hiring for Raymond Page
Oh.
for a new staff.
He was a scout.
He was a scout, and he was to get certain personnel for Radio City Musical. He was to build the orchestra, more or less.
Oh.
And he picked out of Indianapolis Symphony, the oboe player, and Earl Schuster. He picked me. He picked the concertmaster, who was the first violinist, Leon Zawisha. He picked Jay McAllister, tuba player.
And then you went to work at Radio City Music Hall.
And then but I was down in North Carolina playing in North Carolina a very short season, which was followed. And he says, "You got to get up here to New York, or you're not going to get the job." I said, "How can I do it?" I said, "I can." We had rehearsals on Saturdays with the North Carolina Symphony, but I didn't miss any concerts. So on a Friday, I caught a train up to New York, and I deliberately missed the rehearsal. And I got up, and again, in a hotel room, Joe Saunders was there, and Raymond Page was there, the new conductor for Radio City Musical. First one in 27 years. And that they had made.
So is it because they had a new conductor that they wanted new people in the symphony?
Yeah.
Okay.
He wanted all young people. He wanted all, remember that, they always want young people. And with a few holdovers, he had a few holdovers, about 7 or 8 holdovers. The orchestra was about 53, 54. That's small for a symphony, but that's all the stage would hold.
So you had your audition in the hotel room.
And I passed it.
Nice.
And I got Radio City Musical.
Nice. I think that was your favorite one of all of your musical jobs, right? Yes. Radio City.
Radio City, I felt like I was on top of the world.
What were the perks?
And I was getting paid fantastic wages.
How much did you earn?
Rich man, $7,000 a year.
What year?
1950.
So in 1950, you were making $7,000. I'm just curious. Any health insurance? Any retirement plan, or just cash?
Just cash.
Just cash. What were the perks, the benefits of working at Radio City?
Well, you got known, and you got called upon. I had never played a record in my life, recording, and one day the flute player comes to me, says, "Hey, come on, try to get go ask if you can get 2 shows off. You can take 2 shows off here and there, 3 or 4 shows a day, and you can take 2 shows off, but you had to find a substitute to play for you." So I found a substitute. I had a substitute.
And what did you do with that time off?
I played in my first recording ever, a professional one. It was something about Babar and elephants.
Really?
Yeah.
I know who Babar is. Wait, was it for a storybook? Or a movie, cartoon?
It was a child's thing, and I don't really remember.
No, somewhere out there's a recording related to Babar the elephant. It could have been to go along with animation, because they always have music in the background with animation.
It could have been, but this is long ago.
That's okay.
This is about 1951.
Babar the elephant. I must look this up. I like Babar. That was animated. It's a storybook, and it was also animated. So it's likely that they had used the background music for the TV cartoon. Oh, that's awesome. You recorded a lot. Listen, when I Google you, and I have, there is a very long list of studio recordings. So it didn't end with Babar. Do you remember how many other recordings do you remember?
Oh, sometimes they mention your name and sometimes they don't. Usually they don't because it's not important. If you're you did commercials. You might do a commercial, a background for a soap to sell Palmolive soap. You know.
But when I look you up online, there are dozens of recordings with your name credited to them.
Yeah, well, not that many.
You're always part of a band of some sort, but a lot of jazz. I will say that online, instead of class, it was either big band or jazz, all the recordings online.
Well, then I quit Radio City Musical after 3 years.
Mm-hmm.
And everybody thought I was crazy. And
Why
I
did you
was,
quit?
Because I'm travel crazy. I didn't know I was travel crazy at the time. Now I know. Because I can't leave it alone. I still want to travel.
That's fine. We'll travel. I'll get the
And,
passports. So wait, you left Radio City Music for...
Sauter Finnegan.
Okay.
Sauter, these are two different guys. Sauter, it was Eddie Sauter, and Bill Finnegan. They were young arrangers, but they had some success.
And that was a big band, right?
That was a big band, and it went on the road, and it was the newest thing.
Was Cuban Fire the piece that you remember the most? Or?
Cuban Fire, that was with Stan Kenton.
Oh, Stan Kenton later. Sorry, Stan Kenton. I still see his name around. I think he has a chain of music stores or instrument stores in the nation now. I'm serious.
Stan died long.
Well, he may have passed away, but he did establish something under his name. I've seen the name.
Kenton?
Yes.
Could
Yes. And also at Florida Atlantic University, I think they have some sort of department related to that name as well. Because they do have a tuba organization. I took you once to go see the tuba Christmas there. I don't know if you remember, but every Christmas, all the tuba players gather and they decorate their tubas with Christmas lights and they play all the greatest hits.
And I cried, not from sadness, but from, it was just too much for me.
Yeah.
It's like seeing somebody you haven't seen in years that you love.
Mm-hmm.
And the way those tubas sounded to me it was a little bit too much. They sounded good. And the high school kids, but they played very carefully.
No, those were college kids. I mean, FAU, Florida Atlantic has, and it's not just the students. It's just an organization that they have where they get together. And I know it's under, when you look up the name online, somehow Stan Kenton's name is affiliated with it.
Could be.
I have a question for you, though, related to your work in Puerto Rico. Because Mama always told me that you ended up in the Puerto Rico Symphony because of the Ferrer brothers. How did you know Pepito and the gang? I know him as Pepito.
Pepito was in there. Well, I told you there were a few leftovers. When Raymond Page came in and fired all the musicians, nothing personal. He just wanted a new orchestra. He had carte blanche. They said, we want to make a change. Attendance is falling off at Radio City or whatever. And
were the Ferrer brothers part of the new batch?
no, wait a minute, not Ferrer. This is Jose Figueroa.
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm thinking of Luis A. Ferrer, the sponsor at Bellas Artes. So it's the Figueroa brothers. Weren't there three of them?
Jose, what? There were three or four of them.
I know one was the lead violinist.
Jose, who they called Pepito.
Pepito was the one with the white hair who was the first violinist, right?
He was a concertmaster. That's the lead violinist. Is the concert.
And I think his son or his grandson was Henry Hutchinson. I remember that name as
Could
well.
be.
Who later on I think became a director, conductor. But I remember the Figueroa brothers because I goofed around and played with them while I was amusing myself at Bellas Artes. And one of the anecdotes that I do remember is that I didn't care much for classical music, Dad. Sorry, I would fall asleep during the performances. But he would always amuse me and say, I'm going to play the Coquí song just for you.
You want to play the what?
The Coquí song. Because they would play traditional Puerto Rican music. Yeah. And he had me convinced that he was in charge of the program. Yeah. And that on a whim, he could say, you know what we're playing tonight, boys? For this young lady, the Coquí song, because there was some song where with the violin they could make the sound of the Coquí, and that worked for me. But what was your connection to them in New York? Were they in Radio City with you?
Well, no, only one was.
Okay.
The rest were still in Puerto Rico. They never got to New York.
Who was in New York?
The one who was in New York was Pepito, Jose Figueroa, the violinist. He had not been fired. Remember I told you?
Oh, he was already in there when you joined.
He was already in there. And
so you performed in Radio City Hall with Pepito Figueroa. What about Pablo Casals? Was he there as well, or did he?
No, Pablo Casals was only in Puerto Rico.
Okay. Because I know the Figueroas had the Casals connection, and I'm trying to figure out how it's all
Well,
related.
the Figueroas, never mind how the Spanish tell it. If it hadn't been the Figueroas, Casals would have gotten nowhere in Puerto Rico.
So they brought Casals to Puerto Rico.
The politicians did, but they consulted with the Figueroa family, which was a highly respected family.
Yeah.
And they said, what about,
How did they? So once you were living in Puerto Rico
yeah,
and you were looking for work, I think you first looked for work as a tuba player before you looked for work as a teacher, right? Which came first, teaching or symphony in Puerto Rico?
well, I had just gotten my degree in New York.
Because mom made you, right?
No, that's before I had my degree before I met Mom.
Really?
Yeah, I did.
What motivated you to go back to college?
I saw the writing on the wall, Susan. A lot of musicians didn't. A lot of musicians who had more brain power than I did, smarter.
Mm-hmm.
But I was smarter in one way. I saw that mechanization was coming in. A microphone here, a microphone there, this new doodad there. I saw,
The technology
yeah.
was impacting your profession.
Yes, it was. And I saw, and you're never getting any older, any younger. And the music trade, well, no, I can't say that either. But I saw that I couldn't play the tuba forever. And
So you were in your 40s when you went back to college, right?
yeah, I think I graduated in 41 and 42.
Not the year, I mean the age. I think you said you were 43 when you graduated from college.
Yeah, no, not before 43.
How old
It
were
was
you?
before that.
Okay.
I'd have to look at my diploma. I don't remember exactly. But
You don't remember how old you were? Do you remember what year it was, more or less?
it's on one of these certificates somewhere.
Yeah,
I'll have
well-
to look at it.
No, the reason I asked is I just thought once you left Juilliard, you went professional, and I thought the reason you went back to college was because mom made you. So it wasn't mom's decision, that was all you, huh?
No, I already had my master's. I already had everything that I got.
So you got your master's degree.
Well, I did at Mom's pushing. I went back and got some other courses
For teaching.
for teaching to fill in because Hooley wanted to fire me.
Oh, but it's because you had a master's degree in,
Music,
but that's not enough to become a school teacher. You need some school related.
not only I,
Paperwork.
but Betty Bender.
Stay focused on the tuba thing.
Yeah.
So you did get a master's degree in music,
Yeah.
but
No.
for teaching purposes, you need some supplemental items later on, and that's where mom came in.
Master, you have to be able to teach school music, general music,
Mm-hmm.
in a high school, in a public school.
Okay, so you went back to college on your own because you saw that the technology was impacting your profession and thought, you know what, just in case, let me get a backup plan.
That's right.
And then when you moved to Puerto Rico, what were you looking for first? Work in the symphony or work to be a teacher?
Well, the symphony would have been fine, but it only went for 11 weeks.
So it wasn't enough, right?
Oh, hell no.
Which one did you get first? I think you were teaching first and then you got hired as a professional tuba player, right? And how the heck did the Figueroa brothers find you? How'd they find out you were in Puerto Rico, of all things? Or was it just happenstance that you went to...
I saw Pepito. The Figueroa brothers had nothing to do with it. I happened to... Let's back up. See, sometimes you have a little contact, you have 2 or 3 weeks with somebody here, and you have 6 months with that organization. It's all mixed up. You're not constantly with.
Okay.
So I had, before I met Mom, I had already gotten I had gone through a divorce from Lucy and had gotten my finished school. I had to finish school. I knew I did. I finished at that time it was Manhattan School of Music.
Mm-hmm.
Why not Juilliard? Because Juilliard did not offer
A
a
master's.
teaching degree.
Oh, teaching. Okay.
They're strictly professional, like singers and performers. But those days were passing too, and I saw it. And I talked to guys who had done it, what I did, I wasn't the first one. And they said, yeah, I get paid this and this and this. And I, for teaching, and it seemed much more secure to me. So I got, and since Juilliard did not offer those, I transferred my credits to the Manhattan School of Music.
Okay.
The Manhattan School of Music did offer teaching degrees.
Okay.
And that's where I got it, and I graduated around age 40, I forgot.
Okay.
And then I was free to do anything.
When you were in Puerto Rico, though,
Yeah.
and you applied to go perform and work at the Symphony of Puerto Rico.
No, I didn't have to apply. I was taken down there by Lauren Glickman. I was hired in New York.
Oh, okay. So you didn't start from scratch in Puerto Rico. You were brought down to Puerto Rico.
I was brought down
Okay.
because they needed the same old story. They had this, and they had enough strings, and they had enough drummers, and they had, oh, but what do we need? We need a bassoonist. Yeah, we need another clarinet player, and we need a tuba player.
Were you filling in for just a season?
Well, yes, the season, and it was repeated.
And that happened. Now, when you met Mom, was that the first season when you were filling in?
No, it was not.
So you had done it already at least once for a season. You were filling in again while you were there filling in, and that's when you met Mom. Okay.
Well, after the season was over, I would come back to New York.
So that's how the Figueroa family knew you. Now, when you went to perform there at the symphony, did Pepito recognize you from having been in Radio
sure,
City?
I saw him. I told him I was down to play. He said, fine, glad to see you, Jay.
Cool.
Good old times. We talk over old times from Radio City. Oh, we had already known each other.
Okay. And so then you had so you started working for the symphony, the Symphony of the Puerto Rican Symphony. Do you even remember when you had your first season there? How long ago that was? It was before you lived in Puerto Rico. So that.
Oh yes, it was.
I think you moved down to Puerto Rico in what, 1963 or 64?
Something like that.
So before that.
More like 63. Maybe 62, I don't remember.
So maybe your first season was around 62, and you played with them until the 80s, from 62 to like 88, I think.
No, I played 12 weeks.
No, I mean years, in terms of how many years you spent there.
And then I would come back to New York. It was just a side job for 3 months, essentially.
But after you moved to Puerto Rico, you had that side job.
Then I told Mom, let's try to stay here.
Right.
We were beach crazy. The neighbors called us beach crazy.
It's genetic. I live always. Hello. The beach
I know.
is right out there on the other side of those trees. It's genetic, and I cannot be away from the beach, and it's all your fault.
One teacher who was very friendly but very diplomatic, she told me, you are too strict with Felix. I was a mean son of a bitch myself.
Well, then, so they straightened you out and told you to be nicer, right?
She said, when you're speaking with Spanish-speaking families, you have to be a little bit delicate.
Good to know.
She said, you're too strict.
Good for her. Now, I just want to finish up because we need to go have our Holy Friday smoked meal because it's Holy Friday 2021.
Yep.
What was it? Oh, so I was just trying to do the math of how long you were in the symphony in Puerto Rico. I think you started in 1962, and I know I was in middle school. I think it was 1988 was your last year. I'm not sure. Do you remember?
Last year in Puerto Rican Symphony, the Spanish teacher.
62 to 72, 72 to 82, 20 plus years, at least 25 years you played with them.
It wasn't all that consistent or regular.
You didn't do every season?
No, because you always have competition that you don't see, and the people who come up and pat you on the back.
But there were some seasons where other tuba players played for the whole season?
There were
Okay.
here and there. And There was one where they didn't have any brass instruments at all, only Mozart and Haydn, because the cello player didn't want any. He wanted more money for the strings.
But most of the seasons were you, though.
Yeah.
I remember consistently you going and working for the symphony, at least my whole childhood.
Oh, yeah. Well, that was just about my last year, or a year after that.
Yeah, so an estimate would be from 62 to 88 with a couple gaps here and there. But over 25 years in the Puerto Rican Symphony. Nice. All right, Dad. Well, I'm glad that guy showed up and said, "Hey, you guys there with the big lips."
That's what he said. You got thick lips.
You got thick lips. Got an instrument for you. All right, Dad. Thanks for sharing that story with me.